losing control. I'm seeing red. Watch you rise, watch you fall. Now I'm about to break. Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this? Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this? Face the pain. Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fixed Fights podcast with Kurt and Ben. As always, I'm Kurt. I'm here with my main man, Ben. What's going on this week, dude?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. Tons of violence happened this past weekend. And I feel like for people that listen and don't know, like, you know, we kind of like run down, all right, these are the main things we got to hit on. And I feel like there's like 20 fucking things to hit on this week. There's a ton going on in MMA and combat sports in general.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about, a lot going on this week. So let's not waste any time. Obviously, the biggest stories of the weekend happened or came from UFC 263. It was an awesome event. Honestly, I was pretty impressed with the event as a whole, even from like the prelims all the way through the main card. But obviously, there's so many different storylines to talk about coming from that main card. Let's start at the top. Israel Adesanya defends his UFC middleweight title against Marvin Vettori, beats him 50-45 in pretty much everybody's mind except for Marvin Vettori, who actually thought he won that fight. But I gotta say right off the top, I was pretty damn impressed with Israel Adesanya. I thought he thoroughly dominated pretty much every facet of the fight. He was only really in trouble that one time when Vettori had him down, got his back, was looking for a choke. But other than that, I thought Adesanya picked him apart on the feet, tore apart his legs. I thought he did really good work defending takedowns against the cage. I was really impressed with Adesanya back down at middleweight.
Yeah, I thought he looked good as well. And I think even that one moment where you mentioned Vettori seemed to have a choke, it seemed like Adesanya was the calmer grappler in that situation. I still think, I don't think Adesanya is like a phenomenal grappler, but he is clearly like improving in that regards, and he's doing enough. I was critical of him before this fight. I thought, I'm not sure how much attention he's paid to like his get up game. Still not great, but I thought the way he used his get up game was super smart. He didn't waste energy when he didn't need to. Takedown defense looked really good. I was also disappointed in Vettori's performance, but I thought it was pretty one note. The bizarre arguing with Rafael Cordeiro, insane to me that Cordeiro was basically saying, no, you're losing this fight, and Vettori being like, I think I'm winning, is bizarre. I do think we now really have a good idea of Marvin Vettori's ceiling. I will say, shout out to our producer, Justin. I'm going to steal his analysis. Like the next day, I was like, so what do you think about that fight? And he was like, well, I think Marvin Vettori's just a meathead. And I was like, I think that pretty much sums it up, man. I describe him as a hoss. I think we've seen now that unless he changes something up, like this is the Marvin Vettori we're going to get.
Yeah, it was just very one note, right? And we talked about this even last week. What would the battle look like if he cannot get Izzy to the floor for any meaningful period of time? And it's pretty much like we thought. Izzy picked him apart. And yeah, it was just so one note. He just didn't really seem like he had a plan B. I do give him credit. He's tough as nails, like advertised. The fact that he wasn't limping on that leg is amazing to me still. He was able to pressure for 25 minutes on a bum leg. But yeah, I mean, there was just no change up in the game. He just went forward, searching for takedowns, and they just weren't there.
And even like what we're talking about is like a strategic level, right? Like he didn't change up the game plan, but even at like the technique or tactical level, he was getting in on a double leg, getting his hands locked against the fence and just kind of like chilling there. It's like, I know this guy can actually wrestle. Why is he not wrestling? Like, it was disappointing, but I don't want to take too much away from Adesanya, whose kicking game I thought looked excellent. His distance management looked excellent. All the things that we know he does well on the feet, he didn't fuck any of that up. So, I mean, that's really all he needed to do, defend some takedowns and kind of coast to a pretty safe victory.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think Izzy is a little bit easier to deal with taking down out in the open. And I think Jan proved that. And the comparisons with
Yeah.
Jan and Vettori going into the fight, you could draw some similarities, but Jan is not a presser fighter. Jan fights in bursts. He's very good on the counter. He's good at moving back. And he was able to bait Izzy in, whereas Vettori is just forward pressure, forward pressure, forward pressure. And Izzy is very good at takedown defense against the cage. And Marvin just had him against the cage constantly. And yeah, like you said, I mean, there was no even variance in, shooting for takedowns. I think Izzy was just comfortable against the cage. He's super tall, so when he spreads his base out, it's going to be really hard to get his legs together and get him to the mat. Maybe the big shot wasn't there on the feet. And, I think Marvin actually is a little bit more defensively sound than he gets credit for. It's kind of hard to hit him clean, but I mean, I really don't have any problems with Izzy's performance. I thought, especially back down at middleweight, he's just really, really impressive.
Yeah, I think, first of all, yeah, totally agree with the fact that Vettori's a little bit more defensively sound than we might think. Because he is a bit of a meathead, you assume he's just like not moving his head or whatever, but he does move his head. Man, that's a great read on Adesanya. Because even if you look back to, with regard to his cage wrestling being his like really, really strong defensive wrestling, even I remember like his earlier fights in the UFC being impressed with like him kind of using like a Thai style, like double collar tie clinch to move guys away, like circle off the fence, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think if you're banking on taking him down against the fence, you're going to have a long night. And even when Vettori did get his hands clasped on a double leg, Adesanya's there like hammering him with elbows the whole time. So yeah, I think that's a great read. I think that is really like what is setting him apart in terms of takedown defense right now.
And you know what I like a lot about Adesanya? Generally, he makes the right call out. I think when he went up to 205 to fight Jan, it was a good time, right? I think he could afford to go up there. But now he's back down. He gets another win over, I guess the next guy up in Vettori, and he makes the right call out. He calls out Robert Whittaker. We all know that was the fight to make. That was probably the fight to make before the Vettori fight. It just, time-wise didn't line up, but I respect him for calling out Whittaker. Dude, I think that fight is going to be huge. I think it's going to look a lot different than that first fight. Again, Whittaker, he had some things going on. He maybe wasn't as focused as he should have been, but now he's won 3 straight fights against just absolute dogs, the top tier of that division. Man, if you put that fight in New Zealand, which Izzy called for, maybe even you line up the Alexander Volkanovski, Brian Ortega fight for the co-main event, dude, that is going to be huge. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that one. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I love it, man. You know me, huge Robert Whittaker fan. And I think you bring up a good point too, mentioning that like when they first fought, Whittaker was in a different place. He was coming off 50 fucking minutes with Yoel Romero. And I think being a champion weighs on guys. We've seen that forever throughout like combat sports history. So I'm so jacked for that fight. I'm glad that there's like basically no way they can avoid it any longer. Whittaker deserves this shot. Those 3 fights, Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, and Kelvin Gastelum, I know they weren't finishes, but he looked very clearly in all 3 of those fights like the much better fighter. So I think it's pretty obvious who the number 2 in this division is right now. Sign me up for that fight. I'm super jacked.
I know he said he wanted to fight in October. I mean, yeah, I definitely think you can get this done later in the year. I don't know with COVID if you're going to be able to get how many overseas fighters and how many Americans you'd be able to get on that card. So maybe they stack it up with just Oceanic region fighters. I don't know, but man, if they can pull some strings and get that fight in New Zealand, it would be huge for that Oceanic region.
Dude, surely they can. I mean, surely by October, people will be able to travel. At the very least, they'll be able to like quarantine or like prove that you're vaccinated, and then let these guys travel all over the world and fight all over the world.
Or maybe they pull a Bellator like MVP versus Daly and put it in Thackerville, Oklahoma. That one was in Connecticut.
I would go. Yeah.
Gotta give love to Thackerville, Oklahoma.
Always.
All right. Co-main event. Brandon Moreno defeats Davison Figareto by submission in the 3rd round. Dude, this has to be like the feel-good moment of 2021. I mean, what is not to like about Davison Figareto? He just seems like such a fun-loving guy. And the performance he put on Saturday night was just, it was flawless. I mean, off the rip, he knocks Figareto down in the first round, controls most of the fight, gets to the back, finishes him with the rear naked choke. I mean, he dominated every facet of the game. Figareto looked a little bit off, which we can talk about in a little bit, but man, we got to heap the praise on Brandon Moreno, the new flyweight champion. And the big thing about Brandon Moreno, he is a Mexican-born fighter. They've tried to really break into that market following the boxing model, because boxing has been so prevalent in the Mexican market for so many years, and the UFC has just not been able to tap into it fully. They've had Tito, they've had Kane, who are Mexican Americans, but Brandon Moreno has the personality. He's got the fighting skill. He's a Mexican-born fighter. I mean, dude, this just checks off all the boxes.
Yeah, super cool story, man. Great to watch. I think if people ever wonder, like, what does it mean when you establish the jab? I feel like this is the fight, right? He came out and popped him like immediately, really early on with a jab, and was constantly putting the jab in Figareto's face. Whether he was hitting him or not, he was forcing Figareto to react to the jab like right away, constantly. The moment Figareto would think about attacking, like, Moreno's at least threatening that jab, and I think this is it, man. Like, he started with the jab, he knocked him down with the jab, like everything built off the jab, and then on the ground, he was a monster. Like, I thought Figareto was going to be able to like still physically kind of outpower him on the ground, but man, I think it was, I always talk about like the snowball rolling down the hill. I feel like the second Moreno popped him with a jab early in the fight, that snowball started rolling, and then when it hit the ground, Moreno was on his back. Incredible, man. And yeah, this is the UFC's like Mexican star. Tito doesn't speak Spanish. Kane speaks bad Spanish. And then here we have like a real, he's on the UFC Spanish broadcast team. Yeah. Like, he's not only like a Mexican fighter, he's a guy who's on TV in front of Spanish speaking audiences all the time. So kind of best case scenario for the UFC, if I'm being honest.
And I'm sure you saw some of the scenes from back in Mexico.
Incredible.
One of his teammates got a tattoo. That one gentleman, the artist, was working all night through the night to draw this beautiful mural out there. I mean, it's just a really, really feel good moment. And what is next for Brandon Moreno? Because I thought it would have been Askar Askarov, but Askarov was just booked to fight Alex Perez. Now, you could possibly go the Alexandre Pantoja route if he does get through Brandon Royval. Pantoja has 2 wins over Brandon Moreno, but I mean, there is a lot of different options you can go with.
Can I tell you, I don't know. I agree with you. I don't have a firm answer on where he goes next. I will say, I like back in like January 1st or whatever, I wrote an article predicting the UFC champions at the end of this year. So I have to, and I predicted Brandon Royval. So I'm going to say Royval somehow gets past Pantoja and then fights Moreno is the story I'm going to stick with. But also, like, yeah,
well, they have some history too. Remember Moreno beat him when Royval had that dislocated shoulder.
Exactly. And that was shaping up to be a fucking crazy fight. So, for posterity and the fact that I like months ago kind of randomly predicted that, I'm going to go with it. But the winner between Askarov and Perez, I know Figareto is already really angling for a trilogy fight, but I'm not sure. He got his ass kicked so handily in that fight that I'm not chomping at the bit for a Figareto trilogy.
You gotta, and again, like, I know Mexico's, how do I want to put this? Like, I guess their progression with the COVID-19 pandemic might not be as advanced, so I don't know what it would take to get a fight card in Mexico, but dude, at this point, Brandon Moreno's first title defense in Mexico would be just huge business. It doesn't matter who it's against. You got to hope that would be able to happen and you can maximize on it.
Dude, even if they can't do it in Mexico, at least put it in like Houston or something. This Brandon Moreno should not be fighting. He's such a like for the reasons you're saying, like I want to see him in front of a Mexican crowd. I don't want to see him in front of a Vegas crowd. Put him in Houston if you have to do it in the United States, like or San Antonio, something like that.
San Antonio would be a good one.
I mean, him headlining like a UFC fight night in San Antonio, I think would be like I would be super jacked about that.
Yeah.
That'd be bonkers.
I agree. And then if we look at the flip side for Davison Figareto, he looked pretty just lifeless. Like Brandon Moreno looked like he wanted it more, and obviously he did. He put it on Figareto the whole fight. Going into the weigh-ins, Figareto stepped on the scale with, I believe, like 30 seconds to spare. He's missed weight before. So I think the real question is, does Figareto move up or does he stay at 125? And if he stays at 125, I got a good idea for him. How about this fight? It was supposed to happen last year, and we were all kind of about it. It didn't really make too much sense, but now I think it makes perfect sense. How about Cody Garbrandt? Garbrandt coming off the loss at Rob Font. He's nowhere near a title fight. How about we do that fight? The winner of that fight is going to be immediately into the title picture. Cody Garbrandt needs a fresh start. I think that would be an absolute banger if Figareto wants to stay at 125.
I like that. And we're assuming Garbrandt is for sure going down to 125. I'm with it.
I'm not for sure, but I think he could use a fresh start at this point. Because losing to Rob Font, I mean, he's nowhere near a title shot, right? You got Dillashaw and Sandhagen coming up. Rob Font's there.
Yeah.
I mean, Marvin Rice are going to fight. I think there's a lot of players in front of him.
That's a freaking banger. Hell, they could do it at 130 if they wanted to, if they want to like meet in the middle. But yeah, I'm into that. Otherwise, I mean, there's not like any of those fights. Even rematches, right? Even a rematch with Pantoja's, I'm fine with. A rematch with Alex Perez, even though he like guillotined him in like 90 seconds or whatever. I'm fine with all that. I think those are all fun fights at 125. That's like the beauty, I feel like, of 125 is there's so much like parity. All these guys are close to each other.
You know what the crazy thing about all this, just kind of like tie the bow on this co-main event? If there wasn't that low blow in the first fight, we might not even be here at this point. Because if there's not the low blow point, Davison Figueiredo wins that fight by unanimous decision, and who knows where we are. So, I mean, maybe he's got a case for a rematch, or if he wins one fight, he's right back there, but I don't necessarily want to see it next. I think there's a lot of different options you can go for both guys.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still riding this Royval train. Get excited. It's going to be the second half of the year is going to be the Brandon Royval year.
Yeah, I'm with it, man. I love Brandon Royval. Honestly, the craziest thing on this card, and let me break it down for you. We just talked about the two gentlemen that won the titles, and we're not going to even start about the gentleman that won this next fight. But correct me if I'm wrong. Possibly the biggest winner on this card, the most talked about fighter on this card, did not win this fight. But Nate freaking Diaz saves just whatever. I can't even. It's just so on brand with Nate Diaz and the way that he handles himself after the fight. Nate Diaz loses 23 and a half, 24 minutes of that fight and almost comes back and knocks Leon Edwards out in the last minute. And poor Leon Edwards, who has won 9 fights in a row, we're all talking about Nate Diaz and what should be next for Nate Diaz. And we're all, and again, I'm one of the biggest Diaz brothers homers and I'm all about it, but isn't it funny how it happens? And Nate Diaz with 13 losses in a row at this point, like wins and losses don't even matter for Nate. He's just a celebrity fighter. He's an absolute star. And listen, he said it the best in the press conference. He's like, listen, if we're out in the street and this is a street fight, he's like, it was over. He was out there sleepwalking. And everyone's just like, you know what, Nate, you're kind of right, man.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
What's your read on it? Like,
I think
it's crazy, right?
It's crazy, but also this is exactly why Nate Diaz gets more opportunities and gets paid more, even though he's still underpaid. He's not getting his worth than a guy like Leon Edwards. Yeah. Because Leon Edwards, MMA is exciting. I love watching fights. I think MMA just at its level is exciting. So anytime Leon Edwards is fighting, that's exciting to me.
Agreed.
But Leon Edwards' excitement versus what Nate Diaz is capable of bringing to the table are two totally different levels. And I think this fight like displayed why winning is not everything in this sport.
Yeah.
And there's a reason we're talking about Nate Diaz, because he gave us that moment that like you only get an MMA, and it was so fucking awesome. When he pointed and laughed at him with like blood streaming down his face, that was crazy, right? I think this is just, yeah, I feel sorry for Leon Edwards a lot because he is a good fighter and he's been winning all these fights, but at the same time, I don't feel super sorry for him sometimes, because it's like, this is what happened. Like, you see what a good showman can do and still like be a good fighter. You know, Nate Diaz didn't have to lose 23 minutes of that fight to give us that moment, but he did nonetheless. Man, I'm with you. Like I'm thinking more about like, well, when can I see Nate Diaz fight next rather than Leon Edwards?
I wish there was a lot of clowning in this fight. And I wish he went for the kill when he had Leon hurt, and maybe you get 30 more seconds in that fight and he comes out victorious. But one of my takeaways, and one of my big takeaways from this fight, at 170, Nate cannot pressure fighters like he can at 155. We've always, Nate is a volume fighter. He's a pressure fighter, right? He can't do that at 170, especially against the super elite. Ben, I swear to God, if you told me right now, next week, Nate Diaz was going to fight Charles Oliveira for the 155-pound title, I'm picking Nate Diaz. I think he can put it on these 155-pounders. But when you put him in the upper echelon at 170, he can't pressure these guys. He can't back them up. He can't put volume on them like he can at 155. And I think we saw this in this fight. He had to resort to clowning. He's trying to get Leon off his game. And the thing about Leon is he's such a disciplined fighter. He stuck to the game plan. He never really bought into it until he got stocked and slapped in the 5th round. But for me, I just don't think at 36 years old Nate can pressure like he used to be able to, or like he can at 155 at least.
For sure. And we talked about it before. It's like, well, Nate Diaz he has developed a little bit more of like a clinch heavy, kind of impose his physicality game later in his career, but that's been against Conor McGregor and Anthony Pettis.
Yeah.
Right. So 55ers basically, or in Conor McGregor's case in 2016 in their first fight, McGregor was basically a featherweight then, even though he was preparing for a lightweight fight. But also, man, I think, Leon Edwards looked physically really, really good. I think he's a good athlete. And I think, unless we're talking about Kamaru Usman, he's going to be one of the harder guys to kind of physically bully in that division.
Yeah. And we do have to heap some praise onto Leon Edwards, man. He did win this fight. And again, maybe if he doesn't get rocked in that last minute, we're not talking about Nate in the same, the praise that we're giving him right now. But, there was that moment. He did almost finish the fight. And this, I thought it was kind of a hot take, but maybe it's not even a hot take because I've been seeing a lot of guys saying this, and I don't know where you side on this, but give me Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman right now. I kind of want to see that fight more than the Colby Covington fight. Like, listen, the Colby Covington fight, the first fight was awesome, but Colby since then has beaten Tyron Woodley, who's about to box Jake Paul. That's it. All he's been good for is interviews and making up fake names for guys, right? Leon Edwards is on a 9-fight win streak. He just beat Nate Diaz. I know it's probably not going to happen, but I think there's only 2 options for Leon Edwards right now. Either he sits out and fights the winner of Usman and Covington, or he cashes in and fights Jorge Masvidal. I think that's it for him.
I mean, I agree with that. If I were him, I'd cash in and fight Jorge Masvidal because I think that's a fight he wins almost certainly, and then can still fight for the title after that. And if he waits, there's a chance that Covington wins against Usman, and then that almost guarantees a trilogy fight between those two.
I know.
So yeah, I mean, let's see. And Gilbert Burns and Stephen Thompson are going to fight soon.
They just booked Chiesa and Luque.
Yeah, it's got to be a big fight like Masvidal or nothing for him, or wait for a title shot. I should say. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I would be totally fine with him fighting for the title now, especially because I have no problem with seeing Covington get opportunities taken away from him. Like, I'm cool with that. And yeah, like Covington, maybe it's, because I like kind of don't like the guy or really don't like the guy, but he has that one win over Woodley, but his otherwise momentum is gone,
Yeah, it's
right?
gone.
Like, he's just not, when you talk about him fighting for the title next, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot that's going to happen because he's just not the contender I'm thinking about. Here with Leon Edwards, thanks to Nate Diaz, mostly, he's the guy we're thinking about now
Yeah.
because he has this momentum. Mostly, again, because of what Nate Diaz brought to the table.
And for Nate, I mean, we're going to see what happens with the Conor and Dustin fight in next month, but I think if Conor does lose, or maybe even Conor wins, depending on what Conor wants to do, but I think you got to go Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor 3. Nate said he wants to stay active. Again, like, I personally would like to see Nate back down at 155 for this last little run of his career, but who knows what he wants to do. But, I
He
mean,
could fight Poirier, too.
yeah, he could fight
That fight's
Poirier.
around. They still, like,
But
chat
then
at each
again, dude,
other
if,
online.
if Poirier beats Conor, you have to give Poirier a title shot, man.
Yes.
You know what I'm
Yeah, that's
saying?
assuming Poirier loses to Conor. But Poirier also might not care at this point. He might not care about. He only wants big fights, it seems. So if
Yeah,
they
I do.
offer Poirier win or lose against McGregor, if they offer Poirier a Nate Diaz fight, I can see him taking it.
I can see him taking it too. I mean, Nate is, dude, people love him. Like you would have thought they were fighting in Stockton on Saturday night.
Yeah,
And, I mean, dude, the guy is a bona fide star, man.
yeah.
Um,
He showed us why too. I was pleased.
Rounding out this main card, Bilal Muhammad gets a well-deserved victory over Damian Maia. You know, it's tough, man. Damian Maia at 43 years old. It's tough to be a I don't want to call him a one-trick pony because he's got some striking. He's rounded out the rest of his game throughout his career, but you know, he was 1 for 21 in this fight on takedowns. He never really varied off the game. You know, Bilal didn't really beat him up, but it's kind of hard to look good against Damian Maia. You have to be. I mean, you know, the ground is like quicksand against Damian Maia, right? So Bilal could. I don't think he could really open up like he wanted to, but he gets a win. Um, I think Bilal puts himself in an interesting spot. I think he maybe a Bilal against a Hamzat Chimaev when he comes back, or a Neil Magny would be fun. Damian Maia, I know he wants one more fight in the UFC, and I really do hope they give it to him because he deserves it.
Yeah, I don't know. I know he wants one more fight. It sounded like Dana White doesn't want to give that fight to him. That was the last fight on his
I
deal,
know.
if I understand it correctly. So it seems unlikely. He did say before that he like wants to fight one or two more times. I don't know if he's the type of guy that would go to another organization to end his career. Mostly because he doesn't feel like he needs to prove anything,
No.
and I think he's pretty well set. So who knows? But like, yeah, I think that might be the last we see of him in an MMA fight. But for sure, Damian Maia, I would be shocked if he doesn't do like fun grappling matches. Kind of go the like I would see him do a jiu-jitsu match against Rafael Lovato
Yeah, that'd be
in a
awesome.
heart. Like sign me all the way up. And I think he's indicated that that's something he's interested in doing. Not that specific opponent, but going back to competitive jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, that'd be great, and especially with all these, the explosion of like the super fight cards and everything. I think that could be some
Yeah.
big opportunities for him out there. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, what is your thoughts on the main card opener, and specifically, if we look at the finish and the end of the fight, where do you put the onus on? Do you put the onus on the ref for not realizing what was going on, or I mean, do you just chalk it up to Jamal Hill being tough as hell, and if he wants to do that to his arm, so be it?
I think I give it the blame to the referee for that fight going on like 10 seconds too long. I'm okay, if you don't. I thought Jamal Hill was trying to tap,
I thought so
which was
too, but
bizarre.
don't think
That
so.
the ref didn't miss that. The ref missed that. Um, I think, I think the norm is once an arm is clearly broken, you stop the fight, right?
Yeah.
We've seen that throughout MMA history. Ask Tim Sylvia how that goes. And this guy's arm was so, I know it wasn't technically broken, it's just dislocated, but he so clearly had a limb that was dysfunctional. And even then, the undefended strikes from Triangle, like those went on for way too long, even
Yeah.
if his arm isn't fucking noodling around over there, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And again, like, they're in Arizona. They don't go to Arizona that often, so it's I guess a local ref. And again, like the referees, the judges, they got some of the hardest jobs in the business. But yeah, I think that could have been stopped a bit sooner. I'm surprised that Jamal Hill stayed on the mat with Paul Craig so long, and that was a beautiful setup by Paul Craig. But Paul Craig pulls guard, and he had that he hit him with almost like a mirror lock a couple times. I'm surprised Jamal Hill didn't try to disengage and get back to his feet. He kind of played with fire, and it burned him. But big win for Paul Craig nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah. Did you see that afterward? First of all, Paul Craig got his black belt,
I
but
did, yeah.
also they were like getting smashed and partying in the club together. Jamal
Yeah, it
Hill
was
and Paul
awesome.
Craig. Yeah, I think
You'd
that's
love to
cool.
see it. Yeah, you love to see it. Good sportsmanship, no hard feelings. Paul Craig gets a big win, and Jamal Hill will be back very soon.
Yeah.
Quickly, if we look at the rest of this prelim card, give me a name that stood out to you on the prelims. Who impressed you?
I think per usual, Movsar Evloev, man. That
Yeah.
guy's the real deal. We've been saying it like we haven't been. Not that, Hakeem Dawodu was a bit of a stylistic like good fight for him, like a basically a kickboxer only. But Evloev, man, the sky is the limit for him. I hope they don't slow play him too long. I hope he doesn't go like the Arnold Allen route where it's like, God, this guy needs to fight more already.
I know.
15-0. I'm ready for like a big step up in competition for him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I thought he was super impressive. I was very impressed with Brad Riddell. That fight with Drew Dober was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Those guys put it on the line, and Riddell, I think, is a fun piece at lightweight. I think he's now ranked number 13, so keep an eye on his name. Also, shouts to Lauren Murphy, beats Joanne Calderwood, and I think she's positioned herself for the next title shot. Here's your you get to fight Valentina Shevchenko next, but
Yeah.
I think she deserves it nonetheless.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else on 263 before we move on?
I think that's it.
All right, so let's jump back a couple days because I think one of the biggest stories of the weekend prior to UFC 263 has to be the debut of Claressa Shields at PFL 4. She beats Brittany Elkin by TKO in the third round, strangely on the ground. Obviously, she's got some stuff to work on. She's got a lot of holes in her game, but man, I will give her credit. She looked extremely sharp on the feet, which obviously we know. She's a two-time Olympic champion. She's an undefeated boxing champion. She's the real deal on the feet. But on the ground, I will give her credit. She was in a lot of really, really bad positions, but she never gave up. She fought through them, and she gets the win in the third round. I know there's a lot of mixed feelings on it, but overall, I was pretty impressed with her. Again, she's 1-0, and she's doing something that not a lot of boxers are doing and doing successfully. So I give her a lot of credit for this.
Yeah, I think she deserves a ton of credit for surviving. I know there's like two ways to look at it, right? Oh, her ground game looked terrible, but considering what she brings to the table in the striking department already, right? Which is like some of the best hands in the game. And then the fact that she only had these like 7 months or whatever of grappling training, and she's going up against a much more experienced fighter. Don't look too hard at Brittany Elkin's record. She competes in jiu-jitsu constantly,
Yeah.
is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. The fact that Clarissa Shields stayed composed, like didn't panic, didn't like give up, like yes, she was getting taken down, but she didn't give up terrible positions. She didn't panic when she was eating ground strikes at the end of like the first and I think the second round. And I think compare how well Clarissa Shields defended herself on the ground to what we saw from like Valerie Loreda a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
who has been training in MMA for much longer, has like, I think at that point she had 3 pro MMA fights or maybe just 2. Like compare that. Think of like Heather Hardy's ground game. Heather Hardy like lost.
True.
I think didn't she got head kicked like in one of her early fights? Like I
Yeah,
think
she got all bloody and split up, right?
exactly. If you compare how Clarissa Shields did in this fight to other like highly touted female prospects, I think she did way better considering her competition. And it makes sense. Like she's a fucking 2-time Olympic. She is the elite of the elite in sports. So it's no surprise that she can like transition to this sport against a legitimately tough opponent for your very first MMA fight.
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed with her. Slow the roll on any Kayla Harrison talks. That fight is not going to happen anytime soon, if ever.
Yeah,
but
no.
You know what? I think if you bring her up, I'd like to see her against a striker maybe in her next fight. Kind of showcase her a little bit better because I think there was a lot of holes that were obviously very, very visible. But I think you got a lot to work with. She's spunky. She's got a great attitude. She talks some shit. She's got great hands. I think there's a lot to work with here.
Yeah, I thought she was super fun. Like it's fun to see her throw punches because they're so fast and so like vicious.
Fast. I know.
It was. I thought it was exciting to watch.
You know, if you look at the rest of this card, I think the most interesting storyline coming out of this event specifically has got to be Shaman Rice buzzer beater in the second round. Now, obviously with PFL, the top 4 from each weight class go to the next round. And if you look at the featherweight weight class, the top 3 guys are locked. Brandon Loughnane, Chris Wade, and Bubba Jenkins. But that number 4 spot currently is held by Shaman Rice. And the one guy who still has to compete, and I believe he competes this coming week at PFL, but I have to look at that, is Lance Palmer, the 2-time champion. If Lance Palmer, who's 0-1 right now, wants to make the playoff, he has to get a first-round finish against Movlid Habulayev, which is going to be a tough ask. And again, Shaman Rice gets that buzzer beater in the second round, gets him 5 points. I don't know, man. That's a lot to ask of Lance Palmer, 2-time champ. Again, it's different, and it's exciting. I like PFL. I like what they're doing. I like the points. I really do enjoy it, man.
Man, you just cut a fucking promo for why everybody should watch Lance Palmer fight. It's not this week, but I think 2 weeks from now. Yeah. You just nailed it. Like Lance Palmer goes in there knowing if he wants to fight for $1 million again, he has to get a first-round finish. And I think it's super interesting because Lance Palmer is not typically a finisher. No. And he's going against, I don't know a ton about Habulayev, but he is the guy who has like a 7-second or something like flying knee knockout. You've seen that PFL highlight forever. Man, that's interesting.
It's good business, man. You know, even if you look at lightweight, you know, their top 2 are locked in. Clay Collard, who got a win on this card, and Loic Ratshabov, probably said that wrong, but Natan Schultz is in the same position. He's on the outside looking in. Marcin Held, Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis is a guy who has 0 points right now, but I mean, I could see him getting a finish and jumping in. So yeah, I mean, PFL, a lot of interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, I like it, and that's actually one where it helps to watch the entire broadcast. As oddly, like skip through the commercials if you can, but like hearing them explain exactly the stuff you just went through, like that's what makes it interesting. And the fights are good. Like I like the production. I love their I like that. Sean O'Connell, the play-by-play guy, is so fucking
great,
good.
Dude. He's so good.
Who do they usually have on there? Randy Couture as well. And who's there? Is it Eve Edwards? I can't remember who else.
No, it's Kenny Florian.
Kenny Florian. They got a great booth. I like what they're doing.
Agreed. And then if we move to Friday night, Bellator 260 happened, and we do have a new welterweight champion. Yaroslav Amosov completely dominates Douglas Lima, and not dominates him in the you know, where he bloodied him up and, you know, beat the living crap out of him, but he fought a smart fight. He took Lima down. Lima didn't have much offense off his back. And honestly, Lima didn't have much urgency in the fight, which, was a little bit concerning for a guy that has always been just a devastating finisher. But nonetheless, Amosov moves to 26-0. He is the new Bellator welterweight champion. And he's got a lot of interesting fights on the horizon, possibly a Jason Jackson who won in the co-main event, or an LVP. MVP, but we like to crack an MVP on this podcast.
Dude, after seeing how that fight with Douglas Lima went, do you not think Yaroslav Amosov would do that and worse to Michael Venom Page?
I gave MVP about a 4% chance to win that fight.
That's a terrible fight for him.
Terrible
that is such
fight
a bad. Yeah,
terrible fight. Amosov's got a great chin. He's slick on the feet, and his ground game and his grappling is just top notch.
Yeah, I was impressed. I was let down by Lima. I picked him to win. He had that one body kick around second, third round, something like that. But otherwise, takedown. I haven't seen his takedown defense look quite so poor since that fight he lost to Rory McDonald.
Yeah.
And I thought he had all right, he's cleaned this part of his game up, but he just looked a little listless. Not, like you said, not urgent to get back to his feet. Was ineffectually attacking from his back for so much of the fight. I thought it was a weird fight from him.
Yeah, I thought so too. Jason Jackson kind of does the same thing to Paul Daly. He fights a smart fight, takes him down, beats him up. Jason Jackson should be next. I mean, he's on a 5 or 6 fight win streak over some big names, but I gotta think they're gonna go MVP versus Amosov next. They love them some MVP over there. I think they'll want to get him in a title shot. And honestly, for Amosov, I think that's the best case scenario for him. It's against the name. I think it's a good stylistic matchup for him. As opposed to a Jason Jackson who, I think is probably a better fighter than MVP at this point, but has not nearly the name of MVP.
I'm with all of that. I think it'd be weird if they don't cash in on MVP's chances right now, because Jason Jackson is way less known, and is he's a good wrestler, a good kickboxer. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Other than the only reason I think Bellator might not is if they just know they don't want to send MVP out to get taken down and smashed for 5 rounds.
Yeah, we shall see. I think the last one we have to talk about on this card, I think might have been, I might be the most impressed with this guy after all these fights we talked about this weekend. Aaron freaking Pico. He put it on Aiden Lee in this fight. I think he showed his jiu-jitsu. The striking looked good. Now you see Aaron Pico just beautifully blending all facets of mixed martial arts. Striking to wrestling to grappling. He fought a tough, durable guy in Aiden Lee, but, this was a perfect performance. He moves to 8-3 now, 4 wins in a row. He's still only 24 years old. We know about his wrestling chops. We know he's got some striking, but now that he is fighting smarter, he's with a good camp. I think the sky's the limit for Pico. I think he's ready now to start jumping in there with the upper echelon, whereas I think they rushed him in too quick earlier in his career. And again, that could have been, his own calling and his own doing, but I think now he's ready. I'd like to see him fight any of these top guys.
Yeah, I'm with all that. I think his jiu-jitsu is what stood out to me, and I think most people here is I think at first he was a guy who was a crazy good athlete, knew he could wrestle, probably barely wrestled in training, but was obsessed with boxing and thought he was going to knock everybody out. And he did. He had a ton of success with that. And then I think those 2 losses to Henry Corrales and Adam Boric in 2019, he had to totally reassess, what am I doing? And it is showing his willingness to go after submissions and do so cleanly, constantly, I think is an insane threat now. If he's, we know he's a crazy good athlete who's kind of on the feet with his boxing is tempered himself a lot bit, I should say. And then now if it's oh, this is a guy who's going to be going after your neck constantly. He's the very real deal. I'm looking at, let me see if I can pull up Bellator's featherweight rankings here. Well, do you have any ideas for who you'd like to see him fight?
While you do that, he called for a rematch with Boric. I'm down for that, unless you got a better name.
No, I think the Boric fights make sense, but I'm just looking at their rankings. I don't know if they would do this because it's two kind of guys in the same level, but JJ Wilson, I don't know if you know who that is.
Yep, that's
He's
a
a
good one.
jujitsu guy, like a big time jujitsu guy who is now learning, who's like now developing his striking even more. That would be an absolute banger of a fight. Maybe, I mean, Bellator sometimes puts together fights like that, but they're like 4-5 in the Bellator rankings.
Yeah, I mean, they did the Amosov Storley fight, for
Yeah,
example. You know,
I think it's a great
think,
comparison.
I like it.
That would be.
It's a good
they
one.
would grapple, they would do everything. I would love that fight.
Yeah, I'm down for it, man. I think he deserves a guy like that. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is it JJ Wilson ranked like number 5 and Pico 6 right now?
The ones I was just looking at was 4 and 5. JJ Wilson
4 and 5, yeah.
5,
So,
but that might have changed.
Book it.
Yeah, that'd be a super fun fight.
Anyone else on the Bellator card you want to shout out before we move on?
No, man, that's it for me. I loved the Aaron Pico fight to the max.
Yeah, agreed. So we do have some cards this weekend. PFL is back on Thursday night. Welterweight and light heavyweight main evented. Rory McDonald taking on Gleison Tebow. Gleison Tebow is still kicking around at 37 years old. He's fought just about everybody. Dude, Rory McDonald looks so freaking good in his last fight. And it's crazy that Rory McDonald is still so young. He's still only 31 years old. We've just seen him like the peaks and the valleys of his career, but he seems like he's on another high run. I expect him to probably cut through Gleison Tebow like butter in this fight. Maybe I'm, underselling Gleison Tebow a little bit, but in the co-main event, Ray Cooper, the third is always fun. Cesar Ferreira versus Chris Camozzi is on this card. Antonio Carlos Jr., Vinny Magalhaes is on this card. If that hits the mat, that's going to be very interesting.
Ooh, two of the absolute best jiu-jitsu guys, period, in MMA right now. Wow. Yeah, I'm pumped for that.
Carlos Jr. has 6 points right now, so I think a win over Vinny Magalhaes is going to secure him a spot in the playoff. Rory McDonald and Ray Cooper both have 6 points. Man, I love it.
I'm mostly pumped about Ray Cooper, as I am always. Ray Cooper is like the Hawaiian Diaz. Yeah. Like he is Nate Diaz adjacent, I feel like. He's a guy who like literally only trains with his family like in his garage and is just from a family of pro MMA fighters, basically.
Man, that man's got some power too.
I love it. Yeah.
Comes to bang.
He's always, and I guess his last fight, he technically won without landing a single strike, I believe. He just a straight submission. But yeah, Ray Cooper is always must-see TV for me.
Yeah, love it. PFL happens Thursday night. Bellator is off this weekend. Saturday night, we do have a UFC card with an excellent main event, kind of flying under the radar, which is crazy. Korean Zombie taking on Dan Ige. Dan Ige tears through Gavin Tucker in his last fight, calls out Korean Zombie, and gets his wish, man. I love this fight. I love that it's 5 rounds. And I think it's it's kind of a crossroads fight for both of them, right? Because a win over Korean Zombie is going to do wonders for you, right? It's going to vault Dan Ige up into the, probably, I'm not going to say, obviously a title eliminator or anything like that, but it's going to get him pretty close to that spot. And for Korean Zombie, he's coming off that loss to Brian Ortega where he got thoroughly dominated, and his window for a title shot could be closing as well. So I think this is excellent matchmaking. I don't see any way that this fight is not an absolute barn burner. I mean, Korean Zombie I believe he's main evented like the last 8 fights he's had, and there's a reason for that. The guy is always just all action. You're wearing a Korean Zombie shirt right now. Dude, I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I put this on this morning without even thinking about it, like not even remembering like, oh, we're gonna record the podcast today. But nonetheless, I am riding with Korean Zombie for the reasons like, yes, he is an action fighter. He's like always in main events because people love to see him fight. But that's because the guy is a fucking finisher and like so dynamic. He's offensive from everywhere. And we're not gonna like break this fight down in like crazy detail, but I think that's why, we have a really consistent, like steady, very strategic oriented guy in Dan Ige. who has skills everywhere. He's a BJJ black belt, but he's not a finisher. And he's got 5 rounds in there with like one of the absolute best finishers in featherweight history. So that's basically why I'm going with the zombie here. But also, yeah, I can't pick against him on a day I'm randomly wearing the shirt.
Yeah, I'm going zombie as well. I like Danny Ige a lot. And again, this fight I believe is a straight pick 'em. I believe right now it's like minus 115, minus 115, straight pick 'em. I don't know, man. I'm going with zombie. He's so hard to put away. He's like you said, he's dynamic from everywhere. It's going to be a fun fight regardless. Make sure to tune in. A couple other names on the card: Alexei Oleinik fighting Sergey Spivak in the co-main event. Always fun to see Oleinik fight. The guy is like 55 years old. He's had like 300 MMA fights. A little bit of an exaggeration, but honestly not that close. I believe
Dude,
he's actually
50.
like
His record is 59-15-1
with like what 46 submissions or 48 submissions or something crazy like that.
I don't know, and probably like half of them are fucking Nogi Ezekiels and spine locks and shit.
It's awesome. So be on the lookout for a weird Oleinik submission. Either way, that fight's not making it the distance. Either Oleinik's going to get knocked out or he's going to submit this dude. I can't see anything in between.
For sure. Oh, yeah. This fight is not to be like, sometimes the UFC gives you a bad card and sometimes people are like, oh, but it'll actually be good. This is one that is kind of a bad card, right? Not huge on name value, but especially these top 4 fights, all have like fun potential written all over them. Main event is a banger. Oleinik fight, I love to watch that guy fight anytime. It's not going to go the distance. Then look into this third fucking fight, Marlon Vera against Davey Grant, who's been like smoking people lately.
Yeah. And that's
I'm all excited about.
Davey Grant actually beat him in the last fight, so a lot to like there. Let me shoot this at you real quick. Matt Brown is fighting Diego Lima in the main card opener. Matt Brown is obviously later in the tooth, but Matt Brown is, he's synonymous with violence. Just excellent fighter. If Matt Brown wins this fight, how about this? How about Matt Brown versus Nick Diaz? We're looking for a Nick Diaz fight to come back to. How about that freaking fight? That screams perfection for me. Nick Diaz hasn't fought in 5+ years. He's 38 years old. Again, I've said it before. Like, I don't want to see him come back and fight a fucking Michael Chiesa or a Vicente Luque. Like, he needs a guy like Matt Brown. If Matt Brown wins this fight, give me that fight. I don't know if he will win that fight because Diego Lima is much further, from the, I don't know, the downside that Matt Brown is on. Again, Matt Brown's like 40 years old, but we shall see. Dude,
I love that like every week you're out here campaigning for like Diaz brother fights. I love it.
Campaigning for the right Diaz brother fight.
This would be a right one.
Yes.
I'm with it.
A Robbie Lawler, a Carlos Condit, a Matt Brown, something like that.
Matt Brown.
Maybe even a Diego Lima if he wins,
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I would watch the hell out of Matt Brown versus Nick Diaz.
Really quick, I did do the prelim primer this week. There's a couple good fights on the prelim primer. I'll give you 2 of them. Chaos Williams, Matthew Semmelsberger. That is going to be, no pun intended, chaos. And Joaquim Silva and one of my guys, Rick Glenn. That is also going to be an absolute banger.
Yeah. Also, Virna Jandiroba and Kaneko Murata are going to do all the grappling. And that's a super relevant fight at strawweight. Yeah.
Lot to like on this card, honestly. It's one of those sneaky ones where there should be some bangers.
And even Roque Martinez? We even got a super blubbery boy on the prelims. Like this is one, like I'm saying, it's like not to be one of those guys, but this is sneaky a fun card for different reasons.
It's good, man. Yeah. All right. Let's do a little odds and ends. Did you know that the Anderson Silva boxing match is happening this weekend? Fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
And is this real that Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. is also boxing on the card?
I believe he is fighting in an exhibition. I don't know the exact details behind it, but yes, he is fighting. He is probably, in his 50s at this point?
Lord have mercy. I don't know. They're doing it.
My question, do you have any sort of expectations that Anderson can win this fight or even be competitive in this fight?
Yeah, because Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is like a total fuck up, so maybe.
He is not his dad, that's for sure.
And isn't I feel like for them to be close in weight, Chavez has got to be like real fat because I can't remember what he fought at before, but
160.
yeah, and I assume Anderson Silva retiring from MMA is like probably like 210, 220.
I didn't even
Who
think of
knows?
that. That's true.
I have low expectations. It's fallen completely off most people's radar, which is
It
kind of sad.
has. It has. Did you? I guess we stay on boxing. Did you see that weird Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury press conference, and then stare down? So I didn't necessarily watch a lot of the press conference. If you did, you can kind of cue me in. But apparently, Deontay Wilder didn't speak once. He just like listened to his music the whole time, and his cornerman spoke for him. And then they had just this weird 5 minute plus stare down.
Oh yeah. Oh, I didn't watch the whole press conference though, but dude, I feel like if people listen to this podcast or watch it and they understand like the stuff that I like, the stuff that both of us like that's it because it's so silly for like 5, 6 minutes, them staring in silence at each other, and then like it's like around 2.5 to 3 minutes. It's worth. It sounds ridiculous, but it's worth like watching the whole video in its entirety because like it's around 2.5 to 3 minutes that people start getting, you hear people like moving around, like wondering when is this stare down going to end? And then it's like 3.5, 4 minutes in, you hear that woman being like, all right, thank you. Like, that'll be enough. Like, thanks. Like, try to like hustle them along. It's like, that's not going to work. Then the corners or their like entourages come around. And yeah, that guy, like hype man for Deontay Wilder the whole time was just like two time, like constantly, like, man,
It was a weird
performance art
scene.
at its finest. We were talking about it before the podcast that we should get our boxing guy Jeremy Harridges back on
Yes.
to talk about that fight, and also like, I mean, I don't care if it's a month from now, I still want to hear him talk about that press conference because it's just so funny to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to actually go back and watch it because it seems just very, very strange.
If you
Yeah,
like unintentional dry humor, like it's not meant to be funny, and you have to be like, this is weird, but I found it just hilarious.
very weird. Hey, let's end the show on this. There's a couple of fights that were announced really quickly. We will go through them. I think this one makes sense. I think both of us actually said this should be the next fight. It makes total sense. Jairzinho Rosenstruck taking on Curtis Blades. I mean, great matchmaking, perfect sense.
Yeah, and I think let me look at these rankings. Yeah, that's got to be. I mean, heavyweight's a little crowded with John Jones, but yeah, that's. I mean, I don't know where else. I thought maybe Rosenstrike against Volkov if Volkov wins his next fight, but I'm into this striker versus grappler, and we'll really get to see like, all right, Curtis Blades, now you're fighting a guy who has basically no takedown defense. Like, what can you do?
Yeah, yeah. I think he is. It's a must win for Blades at this point.
Right, right.
All right. If that one doesn't get your blood boiling, how about this? Michael Chiesa versus Vicente Luque. Yes.
Banger. Yeah.
Banger. Again,
And
great matchmaking.
I love it too. People are gonna think of this only as a striker versus grappler, but Vicente Luque, he might be a BJJ black belt. That guy has incredible like front headlock, Darce chokes. I think this is like violence everywhere. I love
And
it.
honestly, like the winner of this may be next in line for a title shot. You know, Kamaru Usman's already said Michael Chiesa's name. Vicente Luque has, I believe, he's only lost to what in the last couple of years, Wonder Boy. I think he's beaten everybody else. Love that fight. The last
Yeah.
one, Merab Devalishvili versus Marlon Rice. I think we called this one as well after Merab won his last fight. Really interesting. I think Marlon, I don't know if he's on the downslide, but he is desperately in need of a win. And for Merab, that gets him a big name and just inches him closer to a title shot in the future.
And I feel like that's a bit of a test fight for Marab too. Like, how can you deal against a striker of this caliber? Well-deserved step up for him for sure.
Yeah, and you know, Maurice is a guy that's always had pretty damn stellar takedown defense. So,
Mhm.
really excited for it. Oh, last one, our fucking favorite fight. We've been pounding the drum on since last year. Finally has a date. Pitbull versus AJ McKee, July 31st. I believe I heard it was going to take place in LA. I'm not positive on that one, but man, But still, to this day, that might be my favorite fight in MMA right now. I cannot freaking wait.
It's going to be incredible. We'll have to do something special for it. Have a guest on to break it down, something like that. I'm so pumped. I'm glad that they're not waiting forever and, start like giving the promos. Like I hope Bellator does this fight justice. Like start promoting it now. Give us a reason why this is one of the best fights to be made in all of MMA.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm with you. I think we hit it all. There was a lot to hit, but I think we hit it all. Guys, as always, we appreciate y'all listening. Enjoy the fights this weekend. PFL on Thursday, UFC on Saturday. Hey, really quick, I got to say, 3 episodes in, I'm still pretty damn hooked on The Ultimate Fighter. I'm still enjoying it. That's on Tuesday nights. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a share. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
No escape, can you step to this? Face the pain.